would not be China today if it were not for one person, Confucius. He was a philosopher, a thinker, a teacher in the 6th century BC. And today, in our History and Culture series, we're going to explore his hometown of Qufu. Welcome to Travelogue. I'm Yin. Let's go. Qufu in southwest Shandong province was the capital of the Lu Kingdom during the spring and autumn period from 770 to 476 BC. At that time, Lu Kingdom was just one of the competing 150 kingdoms. Constant warfare meant chaos throughout the land. However, turbulent times were ensued by philosophical proliferation, as the 5th and 6th centuries marked a period of learning around the world. Greek philosophies flourished, Buddhism was founded, and the roots of Confucianism are established in Qufu. Don't think history is a thing of the past, though. Today, the city is still pervaded with traces of the man. For tourists, the town of Qufu serves as a window into the philosophy that still governs Chinese lifestyle today. It's not all peace and quiet here. Every weekend, a large ceremony is held to open up the gates of the ancient city. It's a reenactment of the past. Watch as the warriors stand tall with their weaponry. And you don't want to forget the palace maids that dance gracefully to traditional music. All this, combined with eager tourists, fills the air with pure excitement. Walk through the gates and zip back into the past. Our first stop is Confucius's former residence, which used to be just 3 houses where he lived in. The spot is located within the Confucian Temple. The small yard used to be the living quarters of Confucius. The sage known as Kongzi, or Master Kong in Chinese, was born in the spring and autumn period. Although he was just a normal civilian during his lifetime, his work captured the country and the world after his death. Thus, 2 years after his passing, the king of the Lu Kingdom turned the residence into a temple for annual sacrifices. The Confucian Temple is an enormous complex located in the center of ancient Qufu city. It's comparable to the Imperial Palace in Beijing and the summer mountainous resort in Chengde as one of the 3 ancient architectural complexes. Besides serving as a system of ethics and behavior, Confucius's ideology was a central philosophy that unified peoples during times of upheaval. Thus, emperors of the Han, Song, Ming, and Qing dynasties further built up his reputation and renovated the structure to increase its scale. The Dacheng Hall is the main construction of the temple where most sacrifices were made to Confucius. Sacrificial ceremonies have been held for over 2,000 years. Every year, solemn sacrificial ceremonies were held where emperors would make a special trip to Qufu. The pompous ritual included music, dances, and costumes. The music is composed of 8 different tones, or the sounds produced by 8 musical instruments made of metal, jade, stone, earth, leather, silk wood, and bamboo.
Whoa. You look at these pillars and you just might think you're in the emperor's home, because look at these dragons, or the dragons over there. Look at that. These dragons are used almost exclusively in the emperor's home in the Forbidden Palace, but the fact that they're here in the Confucian temple represents the fact that Confucius was way up there in people's hearts. And look, this pillar is enormous, but did you know that it's made out of one big stone? One big stone for this pillar.
It's said that in the Qing dynasty from 1644 to 1911, Emperor Qianlong offered sacrifices at the temple 8 times. Now, to document visits, each emperor would build a stele. The steles were placed inside a stele pavilion that were brightly colored. There are a total of 13 stele pavilions. And inside the pavilions, there are over 2,200 steles in the temple, dating back to the Han Dynasty. These stele inscriptions extol Confucius, record sacrificial activities, and the life of Confucian descendants in various styles of calligraphy. The temple, blended with the natural scenery, appears serene and simply beautiful. Perhaps it's the green lawns, ancient tree bark, and lively birds that are the only true keepers of time.
This might not look like your typical classroom, but it's supposedly where Confucius taught his disciples. And it's called the apricot platform because there used to be apricot trees all around here. Confucius was not only a great philosopher, but also a teacher as well.
Before Confucius, only the elite were allowed to receive an education. However, Confucius firmly believed that education should be available to all, regardless of their genealogy. He taught his students music, archery, carriage riding, calligraphy, and had a special emphasis on rites. He concluded that education was not simply to deliver knowledge, but also to cultivate good people. He also had an emphasis on benevolence, which he believed was human nature and supreme guidance. Benevolence towards parents, brothers, spouse, and rulers. Most of what people today know about Confucius comes from the Analects of Confucius, which is a record of his speech and behavior compiled by his disciples. It contains 20 chapters with only 1,200 characters. Written during the spring and autumn period through the Warring States period, the Analects is a representative work of Confucianism and still continues to have a huge influence on Chinese and East Asian thought and values today. One famous excerpt is, "Among every 3 persons, there must be at least one whom I should learn something from, by selecting the good thing to learn and correcting the wrong."
If you come to Chufu, you'll see a lot of different modes of transportation. You have cars, you have bicycles, you have motorcycles, and the very special one of those. 走吧，师傅，那边。
Most travelers to Chufu have their interest in Confucius. The 3 main attractions of Chufu are the Confucian Temple, Mansion, and Cemetery. All 3 are included in the UNESCO World Cultural and Natural Heritage List.
Like they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans. If you come to Chufu, you've got to take one of these.
And now to my next destination, the Confucian Mansion.
Knock, knock, knock. I might have some trouble getting inside this door because it said that only the emperor and royal blood could walk through this way. Too bad for me. I'll have to cross on the side.
Right next to the Temple of Confucius, the mansion was the residence of Confucius's eldest grandson and his descendants. As generations of emperors advocated the worship of Confucius, his descendants were given the hereditary title of Lord of Learning. Covering a vast area and containing a total of 460 rooms, this architectural group represents the largest landlord manor in Chinese history. It combines an official mansion and private residence. In between is a forbidden gate guarded around the clock.
So this is the point of intersection. On this side are the administrative offices, and on this side are the residential quarters. And this gate behind me right over there, that separates the 2 sides. And only the Sir Hereditary sages were allowed to cross inside. But before we take a look inside, let me show you something really neat. You know what this is? It's called a water trowel. And that's because sometimes the water carriers would deliver water to the people inside, but they couldn't get in. So they take the water and pour it in here. Let's do a test experiment. Let's go check it out. Oh, the water! I got it. Somebody get me a bucket. One, two, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There's a total of 7 rooms inside this building, and they're separated by these big, thick pillars you can see. It's said that to find out the rank of the family, you look at how many rooms are inside the building. The more there are, the higher class the family is. This family, the Confucian descendants, they're up there.
of the hall is bright and roomy, and we can even find relics of the past. Fine furnishings remain in its original state. And finally, on our way out, you might just notice something very, very striking.
You know, the descendants of Confucius were not only wise, but also very virtuous. And many of them were government officials. And in order to remind themselves to remain very virtuous, they had little hints and reminders around the yard, like that board over there. You see, this is a very greedy beast. His name was Tan, which means greedy in Chinese. Well, how is he greedy? He tried to swallow gold, silver, treasures, and even the sun. Can you believe that? And so the descendants of Confucius, every time they walked out of the house, they would see this board, and they would think, don't be greedy. If you want to know what life in the good old days in China was like, come with me.
The Confucius Native Park is a traditional construction complex which allows visitors to experience the folk customs of Blue Kingdom in the spring-autumn period.
Oh, archery, my favorite. Yo, cameraman, get out the way. No.
But of course, you can't play all day. You gotta find some work as well.
And of course, my favorite, corn. Nice. And on this wheel here, you can grind the corn into brown corn. Oh. This work is meant for an ox. But after it's ground, you can make some corn muffins, or you can make some cornmeal or cornbread, all sorts of delicious goodies. To make some pancakes of my very own. Can you fix up the uneven spots over here? I'm having the time of my life. I'm on fire! Now it's time for the Confucian lunch. Oh, gotta hurry. But there's no objection to his rice being of the finest quality, nor to his meat being finely minced. Well, those are some of Confucius's ideas about cuisine, which are recorded in the Analects right here. And he was actually very, very specific. He said that his meat had to be prepared in a certain way, and also everything had to have a balance, and with the right season, with the right time of the year. And before me now are some of those products that people created after his Analects.
The dishes of the Confucian clan have a great number of varieties and are made from fine raw materials and cooked in a very meticulous manner. The name of each dish is classical and poetic. For example, a dish made from the fruit of ginkgo planted in front of the Song Right Hall is called Song Right Ginkgo.
Let's do a little reading here in the Analects. Ginkgo. You know, many of these dishes tell interesting stories about Confucius's past. For instance, it's said that Confucius taught his son the principles of Confucianism under a ginkgo tree. That's why we have that lovely ginkgo dish. So many dishes. I don't know where to start. Oh yeah, Confucius has one final rule. We have to eat silently.
To the north of the city of Qufu, occupying over 200 hectares, the family cemetery is the final resting place built for Confucius and his descendants. It is the largest and longest-lasting clan cemetery in the world. There are thousands of types of ancient trees in the cemetery, as it is said that Confucius's descendants brought them from their hometowns after his death. There are many historical sites in the forest commemorating the visits of emperors of various dynasties who came to pay tribute to Confucius and his descendants. Also, you'll notice the many statues guarding Confucius' grave. It's estimated that over 100,000 grave mounds and over 3,600 cemetery tablets were constructed.
So now we finally reach the most important part, the tomb of Confucius. And you can tell by the rocks, their smoothness, that many people have come here. The tomb, although is not enormous, but the size of the clan cemetery is 1.5 times the size of the ancient city of Qufu. That just gives you an idea of the profound impact Confucianism had on people's lives, on his descendants, and people around the world.
The death of Confucius has been likened to the collapse of Taishan Mountain, the most famed of the 5 great mountains in China. There's no doubt that Confucius, like the mountain, holds a leading place in people's hearts. In fact, Confucius made several visits to the mountain to study ceremonial rites, particularly the emperor's rite of sacrificial pilgrimages. Confucius's deep interest in the rite of paying respects to heavens and ancestors brought him to this holy place. In the grand and peaceful mountains 70 kilometers north of Qufu, we can sense the enduring Chinese spirit, grounded in Confucius's ideas. The spring and autumn period of Confucius's time was chaotic, but it was during this turbulence that Confucianism slowly weaved itself into the fabric of China. And today, mention China and Confucius probably comes to mind.
Can you imagine that maybe 2,500 years ago, Confucius stood at this very spot, overlooking the entire world, possibly thinking about his homeland of Qufu. It was Tai Mountain that inspired many of his ideas and that influenced many people around the world. Thanks for joining us in today's special. I'm Yin, and see you next time.
In the next episode, we find out what China's most famous monument, the Great Wall, can teach us about the Qin dynasty.